Ken, Kat, Robin, for the wonderful things you're doing here. And congratulate your president, my old friend Dan Papp, for what's going on here, because we all recognize it. We're all pleased. It means so much to Georgia, and it means so much to you students. And you students can be very, very proud. Also, before I forget, I saw on this list the University of Idaho. I grew up on a small dairy farm in Idaho, and I always am pleased when I see others from Idaho getting as far away as to Georgia. So please come and introduce yourself during our break. Well, our topic, building strategic partnerships in Asia. Why are we focusing on building strategic partnerships in Asia? And this is particularly important for you students, because that is where the opportunity is. That's where the action is. And although I love the rest of the world, that's where I'm spending my time. I started, before I came to the University of Georgia, when I was in graduate school, going to Europe. My PhD dissertation dealt with Europe. I spent the first 10 years of my academic career running around Europe. I spent the next 10 years in Eastern Europe. The next 10 years in former Soviet Union and Central Asia. The next 10 years has been wonderfully spent in Asia. And that's almost the only place I go anymore. I still love Europe. I still love Russia, Ukraine, and these places. But I'll tell you, when I go to Asia, I'm energized. It's like coming to KSU. There's so much going on. There's so much development. There's so much need for international participation. And by building strategic partnerships, we can do things that are good for America, good for American global companies, like we have represented here today, and good for our friends in China, in Japan, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in India, all over. So you're at the right workshop today, and keep on coming to Saupo. I hope to see you next year at the St. Regis of Mayo Happy, and I promise to bring many, many more students from the University of Georgia, because we've got to let them see what's going on over here, and we've got to get them involved, just as you're KSU, and good for you guys from Georgia College and State University, another fine university in our state. Well, when I retired from UGA 4 years ago, I thought 40 years was more than anybody deserved to have such a privileged, God-given position. But my wife and I lived 2 blocks off the campus, and I wanted to continue to be engaged students at the university. And so we spun off a company from the University of Georgia called Trade Secure. This company works with businesses worldwide, but particularly in Asia, to promote trade and to do it in a safe and secure way. We deal mostly with government regulations. We know businessmen want to do business, but there are things like government regulations that sometimes get in the way, particularly companies that are dealing in strategic technologies, dual-use technologies, and that sort of thing. When I formed this company, I went and lived in China for 6 months. And I formed some strategic partnerships that are so important to me and my company and to the future. One of the companies was Huawei. We are having a wonderful time working with this company. We like to work with companies that are bold and ambitious and doing important things in the world. We help Huawei develop the kind of reputation, the kind of position that is aware and a good partner in terms of international commerce. And May is so smart in bringing together, in an academic setting, a group of people that helps us in universities, and particularly students, to understand the way that knowledge, the intellectual resources of the university, can be used in business and to create a better world. I'm delighted to be in a new field. I'm learning so much, and we involve so many students. It's students that helped me build the center at the University of Georgia that I founded 25 years ago, the Center for International Trade and Security. And it's students who are the primary people in helping us build this new business. And I'd love to hear from some of you, KSU or Georgia College, and other students. So please come get a card from me, send your resume, and I'd like to be in touch with you. Well, on the topic of building strategic partnerships, we have 4 people here today, and I'm sorry, the only one I haven't got to talk to is J.R. Wilson. But they are the people that are doing these things, and I want to talk, J.R., with you afterwards. But J.R. Wilson from AT&T, I think you've heard of this company. You're going to hear more and more from him. He also had some time out in the West, in a place called Seattle, I believe. And it's good to see people of his relative youth taking on such important positions in the company. Vice President for Partnerships and Alliance, AT&T. He's worked in a wide range of capacities. I hope you all get to know him better. JR, thanks for being here today. I'm going to introduce all of our speakers briefly and then get out of the way and let you listen, draw upon their experience. Alex Gregory, an institution in Georgia, a native Georgian, went to Georgia Tech, Georgia College, State University, and went on to become one of the most respected businessmen in the country with a highly respected company.
Somebody recording this?
If you read his resume, you'll see that not only is he chairman of the board, president and CEO, but the first non-Japanese group officer for the YKK Corporation. That doesn't happen just out of the blue. And when you hear him, you'll find out why that's the case. Next, I'll introduce them in the order I think that they appear on the program. As we heard, Ms. Lee from Huawei cannot be here, but we're delighted to have Adam Siegel, Director of Alliances and Business Development from Huawei Enterprise USA. Mr. Siegel has a great deal of experience. I was delighted to talk to him this morning. He's new to Huawei, but he's going to contribute an awful lot at Huawei, a company that you all should hear more about. Finally, my friend Don Ney, who's an institution in the Department of Commerce, has run all of the awards. And sadly, for the state of Georgia, he's going to be leaving. He's director of the U.S. Export Assistance Center that's based here in Atlanta. He's an Asian specialist. He spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, in India, and recently as director of the Export Assistance Center in Atlanta, but he's off to South Africa in the next month or so. So we're really pleased that we can have him here today sharing his knowledge. So panelists, I'll get out of the way, and we look forward to hearing from you. And I'm going to go sit beside the young woman who has the red cards, who's going to keep us all on time.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Bay. If I can advance this. Yeah. Anyone know the secret to the forward button? Or someone could advance it? There we go. Okay, good morning. So it's an honor to be here. And this is my first event, and obviously it's a very, very diverse group, and I'll just tell you, so yesterday I was on my way home, and every day when I wrap up work, I always call my wife just to let her know I'm on my way, and that's generally when we talk about what I have planned for the next day. So she said, what do you have going on? And I told her that I'll be speaking out at Kennesaw State University, and she asked who I was speaking to, and I said, well, I expect that there'll be a number of college students, and she said, well, what time are you going? I said, I gotta leave early, probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock to get there on time, and I think I'm speaking somewhere around 9 a.m. So her immediate question was, are there any college students that are awake at 9 a.m.? My immediate answer was, well, maybe that's why they have me speaking early. But in any case, it is great to be here, and particularly at this time of just really our life. And I say that in a really big way, in a profound way. And just step back and think about this for a second. We are going through a major technology revolution. There's no doubt about it. It started in the 80s with computing and the PC, and now it's being transformed, and it's really being transformed by mobile broadband. And I'm quite certain that whether it's my children or our great-grandchildren, they're going to read about it in history books the same way that I read about the Industrial Revolution. And it's moving at a very, very fast pace. If you look at just what's going to happen over the next 5 years, Randall Stevenson, the chairman of AT&T, says there's not a single company whose business won't be radically transformed by technology over the next 5 years. And you're seeing it at all different levels and in places that you would not expect, including with bricks and mortar companies. So take even the taxi business. How many of you are familiar with Uber? Uber's been very, very disruptive, and it's a very global business. And I believe that if you look at the Fortune 500 or the Fortune 100, over the last 30 years, generally there hasn't been too much movement in and out of that. But wait until the next 10 or even the next 5. There's going to be lots of movement. Companies that you would never expect to fall out, and then companies that we've never heard of that come in. So at least for me, this is a very, very interesting time. And I've been with AT&T now for about 13 years. I've seen the business grow and mature, particularly in international. I've been doing international my entire life. So what I'd like to do is I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what we do from an international perspective. I'll focus it on Asia. I'll tell you some of what I would say are my keys to success. Of course, everybody has their own views, and I'll just tell you what I think has helped make me successful. And then I'll give you a little bit on what I see as emerging trends. So let me start with partnerships in Asia. So the top 3 here, if I look at just cellular and I look at roaming, and I know a lot of people here, I'm sure that you've made international trips. I mean that service works effectively through a portfolio of bilateral agreements. AT&T doesn't own Networks International. That means that we have to partner. I've been managing AT&T's roaming business for about 8 or 9 years now. If you go back 10 years or 12 years, the technology in the U.S. was different than technologies outside of the U.S. So really this business didn't exist at all. So if you look at where we're at today, and this is a concentration in Asia, 115 roaming agreements. Many of you may be familiar with 4G or 4G LTE. This is the next generation. It's the faster stuff. So we have 57 LTE roaming agreements, and we've got a lot of those commercialized. I'm not aware of any of our U.S. competitors yet that have any LTE roaming, and frankly, the Asian communities have been very, very progressive, a lot more progressive than places like Europe in terms of deploying the next generation of technology. And I think a lot of that goes back to Europe. They say they're still paying for their licenses, and it's a more heavily regulated environment. But Gary's absolutely right. I mean, Asia is where the opportunity is, and that's where you're seeing a lot more progressive in the marketplace. Wi-Fi is also something that's emerging at a very, very fast pace. And it's not like the Wi-Fi that we've grown accustomed to, where you got to go and find the hotspot, and then you got to click on it and go through some authentication. This is next generation Wi-Fi, and we're calling it next generation hotspot. So this is where Wi-Fi starts to look a lot more like cellular, where it becomes seamless and secure. And if you have a data plan, as a consumer, it doesn't really matter. You don't even really need to know where that broadband service is being delivered. In other words, which technology medium. It just happens. And you see places like China, very, very aggressive. China Mobile, 5 million hotspots, and they're becoming deeply integrated into the cellular experience. The Koreans as well, very advanced. Like they've adopted this next generation of network technology called 802.11ac. So this is super fast Wi-Fi, and they bring fiber to it, and they deliver 200 to 300 megabytes per second. And if you don't know what that is, just think it's super, super fast. They even call it 5G Wi-Fi, so very progressive. So we're building a bilateral portfolio of Wi-Fi roaming agreements for our customers who travel abroad, so that they have that same experience. Another area, and the area that I spend most of my time these days, is machine to machine. So this is the Internet of Things. So this is basically everything is being connected, everything's being mobilized, and everything is being globalized. You can't walk into Home Depot anymore without seeing an aisle that's just full of connected devices. And they can be connected through lots of different ways. It could be through Wi-Fi, it could be through cellular, it could be through satellite. AT&T, a few months back, we announced a big deal with General Electric, where AT&T is going to manage General Electric's machine-to-machine business globally. And as you know, General Electric is a very large company. It's everything from small appliances to very large industrial. So think like connecting an airplane engine or connecting a black box. Never having to be in the situation that we're in right now, where we're trying to still find Flight 370. And being able to diagnose problems real time and hopefully fix them real time so that we can avoid disasters. And of course, there's a lot of efficiencies that come with that. AT&T also has a joint venture in China. We've had it now for about 25 or 30 years. I believe we're the only telecom company in the US that actually has a joint venture. We do that with China Telecom, generally based around traditional telephony services, but nonetheless a very important part of our portfolio. In terms of keys to success, and I want to tell you some stories here. So I've been very, very privileged, of course, just to be standing here in front of you all. I'm very privileged to have the job that I have at AT&T. But I've invested a heck of a lot into it. And I've invested a heck of a lot in terms of building relationships and rapport over time. And I know that all of these things are common sense, but I'll just share with you where I see people fall short, because they fall short on these things all the time. And I'm not saying in any way that my way is the right way. It's just the way that's worked well for me. And I start with, you have to have a very deep understanding of each other's business. I had mentioned machine to machine. China Mobile, China Unicom. China Mobile is the largest wireless company in the world. They've now got over 1 billion subscribers. China Unicom is second. So these are huge, huge companies. And they can invest lots of resources. They deploy their own machine-to-machine solutions in China. So why would they ever partner with AT&T? So that requires a lot of understanding. And it goes back to, what is it that customers want? And it's companies like General Electric. They want to manage their business through central platforms, and they want to manage it globally. So when they go and they develop a new feature or a new function, they want to do that development once. They don't want to have to replicate it everywhere around the globe. When they're in manufacturing and they're enabling this service into the hardware, they want one SIM card, a global SIM card. They want that to work everywhere. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time, frankly, to sit down with your partners or potential partners and go through that iteration and make sure that everyone understands the mutual benefit. In terms of relationships, I think the key there is always going one step deeper. You can have an email relationship and you can be quick to respond, or someone calls you or they come and visit you. Kind of my rule is that when someone sends me an email, I always respond that day. I pretty much, 90% of the time, The other 10%, I basically have to be dead, but I give it the best efforts to respond right away. Same thing, phone calls, it can come at 11 o'clock at night. I have a very special relationship with the CEO of China Unicom, which is a close partner of AT&T's. And when they come to Atlanta, the first visit that they came, I wanted to make sure that was a very welcoming visit for them. So I wanted to make sure that, we didn't just meet at a restaurant. I didn't leave them to figure out their own transportation. So we figured out transportation, and I took the risk and said, I'm going to invite the CEO of China Unicom to my house. And my wife and kids are going to be there in all their glory, running around and spitting up and all that. But I'll tell you, it's made a huge, huge difference in the relationship. When I go to China now, I always have an invitation from Mr. Liu Yiming, and that's allowed us to move our business so much faster. I can remember a phone call I got at almost midnight on a Friday night where they were having problems with one of their vendors, and it was a vendor that we both used. And they said, hey, is there any way you can move your business to this other vendor, and how quick can you do it? And I just said, yes, it'll be done by Monday. And I knew there was this big, long AT&T process, and things don't happen that way, but I just did it. And now, when I need something, it's very reciprocal, so it happens fast. Honesty and trust, obviously that's a logical one. I don't think that always means that you have to be soft and cave to everything. I know, we're always trying to reduce the cost of roaming. As you know, it's very expensive. So I'm a big free market guy. I like having lots of agreements with lots of operators. That gives us flexibility in the market. But I remember a few years back when we were trying to really drive costs out of our portfolio, I had to make some tough decisions, and I went to companies and said, look, if you don't reduce your costs, I'm going to pinch you. Pinching means basically you take the pipe and you just cut it off, so you cut off all the revenue. And I remember India as an example, every single operator, the wholesale rate was the exact same price. Not that they were talking to each other or anything like that. So I said, okay, I need to get some things moving here. And I was just very direct and honest, and I did it. And the fact that I did it, I may have established a little bit of a reputation, but they knew that I was going to just be honest with them, and generally speaking, the relationships are very good. Humor, of course, is also very important. I'll just tell you a very quick story about being in Mobile World Congress, which is the largest industry event for, call it wireless, or really technology these days. It's held in Barcelona in February. And myself and my boss were meeting with a very senior person at Docomo, Kisan. Kisan also sits on the board of directors of the GSM Association, and he always brings an American guy who works with Docomo. He's kind of the liaison. His name's David Chatlow, really good guy. So we sit down, and they had mentioned this guy, Larry Ding. Larry Ding is a gentleman that I hired a few years back who was born in Shanghai, so he's Shanghai Chinese, but he also spent 5 years working in Japan, so he speaks Japanese. And I thought that could be a very useful tool for me, especially because the Japanese culture, lots of times when you're working with them, you have the meeting and you're all facing each other, and then there's lots of sidebar conversations, and generally they have the lower level guy who manages all the communication. They're trying to figure out who the real decision maker is and what's going on. So anyway, we're sitting down in Barcelona, and David Chatlow says, and I think he was letting Kisan know, he said, hey, so I heard that Larry, who was born in China, also speaks Japanese. And I said, yeah, that was supposed to be a secret. And there was this pause and then a lot of laughter. And then they said, and I heard that Larry he works for some other group now. And I said, yes, I fired him. So in any case, humor is different across, all different cultures, but for them, they understood that very well. They did find it very humorous, but also I think that it establishes a little bit of, rapport. They know what to expect when they work with me. In terms of emerging trends, so again, I mentioned Wi-Fi. I wanted to give you some numbers just so you can see what's going on. So if you look at global public hotspots, today we're at about 7 million. That'll go to 10 million or over 10 million between now and 2018. But what's really interesting, again, is 88% of the growth is coming from Asia Pacific. In terms of This really, plays into machine to machine. All these new modules, or a lot of these new modules, they are going to be Wi-Fi enabled. So if you think about the opportunity, 18.7 billion, so 2.5 times the world's population in terms of devices. I had mentioned trends. I had spoke quite a bit about machine to machine, so I won't spend too much time here, but I will tell you, things like the connected car, I'll focus on this one. AT&T is really the market leader here in the US around connected car, but also international. Our business is very international. Again, I go back to, it's that centralized platform. It's being able to develop to it one time. So there are actually cars in China, and there's cars in Asia today that AT&T, we've managed through partnership, and it works very, very well. Small cell HetNet, that's again where Wi-Fi is going to effectively merge with cellular, and it will all look the same. So tremendous opportunity, and poised for a lot of growth. So just to wrap up, this is a quote that I like. If opportunity doesn't knock, build the door. So again, I go back to my first slide. Those three categories, if you look at cellular, Wi-Fi, machine to machine, when I started at AT&T, none of them existed. I built them, and if I look at my career at AT&T, I've never once been promoted into a position that somebody vacated. I've always built the business, I've always grown the business, I've reached out to my international counterparts, and we talk and we learn about the opportunities, and then we go and pursue them. And at least that's been successful for me. Now, I have told Ralph Della Vega, the CEO of AT&T Mobility, that for my next promotion, I would like to just take the position that someone vacated, but I'm not sure how that'll work out. In the meantime, we're just going to keep growing, and of course, Asia is a huge part of our business. So with that, thank you very much.